Okay, I believe we're live. We're going to double check this and see how it goes. And then momentarily we'll have a formal introduction of our program today. Testing the live broadcast now, and let's see what comes. Okay, it looks like we're going live. And hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to What is the Positive Show. My name is Roland, and I'm one of your hosts. We have some co-hosts today who I will introduce in a minute. But I would want to preface this day by saying my intention with today is not to stir up trouble. My intention with the show in general is to be able to find a place and a positioning for myself so I can express ideas that I have that probably very few other people want to listen to. And in that respect, I have a bit of a platform here, but it is also a welcome platform so that other people can express themselves too. So it's not just me. It's a grand place for me to decide what the subject matter is, to say what I want to say, but I welcome the people in the audience and in the green room to express themselves too. With that in mind, we will deal with the subject matter of today in just a moment. But first, I would like to introduce the people in our green room with us today, and I'm going to start off with Shira Hunt. And then Shira, if you would say hi and tell people a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shira, coming from Las Casas, Tennessee. I'm a vibrational medicine therapist and teacher. I use frequency, mostly sound, but all kinds of frequency and treatment. And I love being on the show. I love all these guys, so it's a good place to hang out.
Cool. Thank you very much. And next, as we go down the line here, is George Stewart. Say hi, George, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm George, based in Central Tennessee. I've handed my crown of comic relief over to Carlo, who you'll hear from next, because he's far better at it than I am. That apart, go on.
Now that's a debatable subject.
Too kind. You're too kind, George.
Yeah, we're going to do that next week. We're going to figure out who holds the crown of comic
Oh my
relief.
God, what have we started?
Yeah. Actually, I think that the concept of bookends is much more appropriate, however dehumanizing that might be. But anyway, yes, our last co-host in the green room today is Carlo Savio. Carlo, give us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Roland. I'm Carlo Savio in Las Vegas, where I'm happily living an examined life, mainly because I'm no longer young enough to think I know everything. And I'm also happy to be in such an august company again for this hangout.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carlos. We have a lot of fun here, and part of it is because we are some somewhat progressive thinkers and very open-minded about a lot of things, and it can get really edgy at times when you talk about what reality is, when we talk about right and wrong, concepts that we run our lives by, it gets a little bit edgy. But what I like to do, and what my spirit is basically based on, I believe, is I like to find the common ground. So one of the things I'm hoping that Dan will be showing up today, because he always adds a lot to the conversation, and I value his point of view. And also another one is, oh, there's Dan, and also we wake Bendor Rao is in the audience too, and I really value his input very much so. Although it is not quite so acutely radical in this particular environment as Dan's, I don't find that either of these people and most of the rest of the people who visit us are adversely thinking so differently than I am. And so much of the time when I'm listening to people in general, there'll be several people in the room, and we all have our opinions, and I'm listening to everybody speak, and I'm often the person thinking, yeah, I can see where he's thinking that. Yeah, I can see where she's coming from. And so, yeah, and the group in general is pretty much thinking a similar thing. And yet everybody's thinking something different. And yet, at the same time as this, everyone is really standing for what they think is right and what they believe. And one of the reasons that I've been quiet so much in my life is I really believe that the more and more I sit there and absorb, my own thinking changes as I go. Now, in my early 60s here, my thinking isn't changing so radically anymore. I'm holding on to some common thoughts that I believe in and can adhere to and I'm comfortable with. Now, does it make it perfectly right? No. But we're dealing with a few concepts in life that allow us to think differently. So we're going to address these things today, a few of these things. We can't possibly address them all. And we're going to get back around to the comments or the questions that I had in the details of the event today. And just to touch on them briefly, I asked the question, why would God create an imperfect world? In other words, if you're one of these believers that wants to believe in God, and I am, but I'm not, it's because it's a very non-traditional concept of God that I have, why would he create something imperfect? And when you look at the existence in the world, everyone's view of the world, we cannot be what we are communicating in an international communication device of the internet and what's going on in the world and say that the world is perfect. That theme does not fit very well. So while there is imperfection in the world, how could God have created that? How could God have created an imperfect world? Why would he allow for sickness, conflict, and poverty? Now, I believe that there's an answer to this, and I believe we are the living answers to this. But it would be interesting to know what the people think. So we will open this up in a minute to the. We'll come back to these questions because one of the things that follows this is like, if there is a God, and a majority of the earth, or maybe not, but a lot of people believe in a concept, not the concept, because the concept is different per person. But most people believe in some kind of a concept of God or a creator or a mastermind or a higher spirit or a higher something, presence of some kind. And usually it relates to consciousness and intention. I'm not so sure of that, but I'm not so sure about the intention, because when we talk about God, so many of the religions talk about, yeah, my God has a purpose for everybody, and so I agree with that, but the way I agree with that is not the same as like 99.999% of the rest of the people who would say the same words exactly. So we'll get around to that in a bit. But I'm going to, basically babble out a few things that I believe and place them in the framework that gives you an idea, the people listening, that all these things fit into the framework of what I believe the universe and life and being human, etc., is all about. In other words, these things all fit into the principles of my reality. So, that being said, hi Barbara Quick. She's here live watching the show and participating and making comments. So thank you very much for showing up. It's great to see you here. I'm glad your schedule opened up a little bit to allow you to be able to attend and be with us today. By the way, a week from today, Barbara Quick is going to be the subject and our guest as long as her schedule holds out. Barbara Quick is going to be our guest in the green room, and the presentation for which the show will be based. And that will be next week, 1 week from today on May 3rd. Okay, so back to my subject. I'm going to make some declarations here and talk about a few concepts that are going to stir people up, and we'll see what happens. Okay, we had a concept session a couple months ago where George asked us, everything is divine, or he didn't ask, he basically declared, everything is divine or nothing is. And that little sentence, that framework and concept has been reverberating throughout our episodes ever since. And excuse me. So to place myself firmly in the concept realm of which I believe is going to be this. I believe that everything is divine. Now, within that, you're going to start asking, well, if everything's divine, why this, why that, why so forth? Okay, no matter where we position ourselves in our beliefs, we can ask those questions, and we will be confronted with the conflict in thinking about, well, if you believe that, why this, why that? And most of my applications for my own self are geared towards answering that why question. So whenever we come up with a subject, we could go off for a full hour or more sessions and days about the subject and what I believe. But right now, I'm going to try to give you a little bit more meat about what I believe. Okay, within that concept of everything is divine, I believe that we create our own realities and also our co-created realities. So not only are we doing something to believe from the one point of where we are, but we also join in our thinking with other people and find ourselves amassing in concepts and belief systems that vibrate in the same frequency as we do. And also in the midst of that, we experience the things that vibrate in conflict with what we believe, which is self-evident by all the different conflicts and poverty concepts and sickness and illness that we are experiencing in our lives. So not only do we vibrate with the stuff that we vibrate with, but we vibrate against that which is the opposite or in conflict with the vibration that we're in. So I believe that we create our own realities and we co-created realities. So all this is happening at the same time. So in other words, sickness, poverty, and conflict, even though I don't stand for those things, they are part of the co-creation of my experience, which is why I'm here, speaking to you folks on the internet, I guess. Okay. The concept of free will. Free will says we are free to believe and act any way we choose. We are free to act any way we choose. We are free to believe anything we choose. And I think most people will believe that, and then beyond that, they start judging each other because it's like, well, if you believe that, why did you do this and why did you do that and so forth. We start judging people, and the non-acceptance of other people is part of the major friction that goes on in the world. Here's an interesting. One human life or many. In other words, if you believe in reincarnation or if you believe in one life, either way, the reality beyond which we believe makes us all correct and makes all things possible. So it doesn't matter what you believe, if there's only one lifetime or many lifetimes, it doesn't matter. The reality beyond what we're thinking and what we understand, that reality, whatever it is, makes all these things possible. So the palette upon which we're being painting and which we are painting is much more broad a canvas. It's not just two-dimensional, it's not just three-dimensional, not just four-dimensional. Maybe it's not just five-dimensional. I think there are an infinite number of dimensions. So when we're thinking about the 3D world, how can we be so judgmental and thinking so absolute that something's right when it's such a minute part of what reality is? How can we believe that we're so right and so righteous and be so self-righteous about ourselves if we're just this little bit of stuff going on and that's it? So self-righteousness is not something that I have a lot of room for in my life. And by the way, comment tracker is working, and I'm going to be going on to that in a bit. But whenever these sessions for 1 hour take off on Tuesdays, I find that the conversation in the green room and the conversation in the audience, the listening audience and the watching audience, is so prolific that I lose track of what I wanted to say. So I'm kind of getting it out early in today, and then I'll turn the show over to everyone else's input, and then I will relegate myself to try to organize, for the show's purposes, what the people in the green room and in the audience are saying. And that will be my higher purpose today, to coordinate the conversation. But just a few more things. So, okay, check this out. Parallel universes, alternate realities, reincarnation, multiple personalities, astral projection, time travel. All these things are evidence of the same principles in the higher reality. Okay? So you can say, well, wait a minute, and what are those things that he just said? Well, they're different concepts coming from different directions, but we're talking about parallel universes, alternate realities, reincarnation, multiple personalities. That's just one person in the midst of their living a human life right now that might be sitting next to us, or maybe it's me. And multiple personalities, astral projection. In other words, finding yourself in a different framework altogether from what you think your human life is. And time travel, let's step one step beyond our concept of thinking, are all evidence of the very same principles. So that's a subject for another day, obviously. All these things are part of a greater truth, which can be expressed in the simple thought of all is well. Now I know that I'll have the multitude telling me, dude, you're full of shit. All is not well. And like, I believe, yes, it is. I believe that the sickness and conflict and poverty in the world are expressions of free will, that if there is a God, he gave it to everybody, and he gave it all equally, and he created us in his image, and he said, or he insinuated and suggested, all men are created equal. And the nation of the U.S. is founded upon this principle, all men. And that means all men, women, children, everybody, upon inception. We are all created equally. Now, the results after that are that we all express differently, which is why we have so many different types of people, so many different problems that we observe, and the issues and so forth. But in concept and in principle and in spiritual right, we are all created equally. So I know I've basically said a lot of things that are going to irritate a lot of people. But now that you know a little bit more about Roland, we're going to come back to the basic questions in a moment. But does anyone want to have do we need to like reach out and hit the pressure cooker release valve to let anyone let off some steam or express something that they don't want to let go until I ask the question? Anybody want to put in at this point?
Hey, Roland, I'll drop one in for you.
Okay, good.
Based upon my language as a minefield perception, where the statement is everything is divine or nothing is, did we ever get a definition of what divine means? Because that seems to be critical within that statement.
Yeah, I think that in my mind, which is not necessarily going to wrap up the general consensus, but everything is divine or nothing is basically draws the equation of what we are and what God is in principle or in concept. So when we talk about divinity, there is no difference between the concept of God and the concept of me. Anyone else have anything to contribute to that?
I wanted to thank you for a new word, reincarceration. I love it. I love it.
Is that what I said?
Yes, But that's a perfect blend.
Wow.
In the thought of reincarnation, what a blend, a beautiful blend, reincarceration.
It's all about attitude, right?
I guess so.
We're talking about the same principle with a little different attitude.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, Thank you for that, you guys. Um, that whole concept of divinity is something that we all have to deal with at some level, and depending upon how we can look at life, we're going to consider the possibility of a oneness with God or a non-connectivity with God, and having to the whole concept of like being born again. You have to let Jesus back into your life. You have to let the Spirit back into your life. I'm not a believer of this. I believe if anything, being born again is realizing that there is the oneness there, whether you think it is or not. So it's like being divine is being divine. Whether you realize it or not is the concept of being born again. And so when you take it upon yourself to actually believe in your heart, yes, I recognize the connection now, then you're born again. And it's not something that is
Roland,
outside of you that comes in. Yes.
if I could speak to that piece, and divine in the dictionary is being of, from, or like God. So if you don't believe in God, you're kind of up the creek with that one.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But to me, one of the greatest sins that was ever committed on this planet was stripping a child of their godliness and their perfection when they entered this world. That usually before the age of 5, we no longer know our greatness, our perfection, our value. We don't know that we came in here as the wisdom. By then, we think we're wrong about everything, and we're trying to figure out when we're ever going to be right. So to me, the divinity is what we are. We can't not be that. We choose to express in ways that would push that down, that would cover that up, that would strip us of it in our daily processes. But I believe even people who don't believe in God and don't aspire to that there's something more than just this life, I see the God in them. I see the Spirit in them. I know they're divine. Whether they know it or not, it doesn't matter to me. It's like, I get it. I see it. But I think that that's one of the biggest things, that divinity is what we are. We come in here that way, and we lose that, and a lot of that we lost through the religious teachings. And so that's the hard piece, I think, for people.
Yeah. I agree with that, and the concept of what you just said, we lose a lot of ground in religious teachings, and many people would relate to that as dogma. And so once we have a religion that forms, it's a certain small little microscopic group of people who believe their interpretation of life and worship of this so-called God, or this concept of God, is best expressed this way. You have to look this way, say these things, and be here, be there, and do certain things in order to adhere to the principles that align you with God. And that's such a big hogwash. I mean, it's literally hogwash. And, one of the churches that I was in when I was age 15 told me that I had to wear this amulet around my neck, and that you have to pray to God, and that you are just a channel of God's light, and that's the connection. And God's light is the one that heals, and we are channels, so that the light passes through us and to other people through a thing that's very similar to like Reiki, what's called Jorei. And the first thing I thought was, in other words, in order to pray for people or to heal or to provide this aspect and be a channel of God's light, I have to have this amulet around my neck. I mean, and of course they didn't call it an amulet. They called it the ohikari, or the divine light, or this emblem, and the physical thing that allowed the light to pass through us at least at a greater degree. And I thought, no, I can't hang with that. So the very basics of one of my earliest religions was a rejected concept to me, because I didn't believe that God meant that we have to have this thing hanging from our neck on a chain or a piece of string that's made in gold and has a certain thing, an emblem representing the church. I don't care how divine or how great the concept of the church is. For me to have that in order to do God's will did not make sense. And then go ahead, Carlo, you have a question?
Yeah, did you have to buy that neck piece, or did they give it to you?
Oh, no, you didn't have to buy it. You made a donation to the church.
Oh, so there was a transfer of value. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is, yes, the things are made in gold, and there is a monetary transference. And, I wore that around my neck for a few years, and the silk string got dirty and broke, and the gold started to wear away, and, from my bodily contact with it. And it just didn't make sense that all this was God's will. And I thought, God doesn't need anything, and that is if the God that I was taught through this religion was the thing governing my thinking, or the right way of thinking. I don't believe that God would mean that I couldn't do what I needed to do to express His will in my life, and I had to wear that thing around my neck. It didn't make sense. So, in other words, Roland came to a dead end and dropped out of the church. Did I stop channeling the light? Did I stop praying for people? No. Did I stop being a light bearer in my own way? No. But I never believed that I needed the amulet, so I just kept doing it on my own, without.
I feel like there's a lot of confusing things like that in the religious aspects of the teachings. I had at a very young age too, like you, had a hard time believing a lot of what they said. My grandfather was a preacher, apostolic Pentecostal. I mean, these are the holy rollers, and let me tell you, they get it going on. But I would sit there and go, wait a minute, I think you guys are misinterpreting something. I think you're not reading this right, And there was even the question for me. I mean, things like this loving God creates you in His image, and then He'll burn your ass in hell if you make a mistake. That didn't make any sense to me. I was just like, excuse me, if He's a loving God, why? Why would that ever happen? That didn't make sense. But then there was also this aspect of He was out there. He was the big thing out there that you bowed to, that you prayed to, that you begged for things from. And yet, when they wanted to pray for somebody, the elites, the ones on the pulpits, would lay their hands on people to pray for them. And I would think, why are you laying your hands on them? God is out there. What does that have to do with your hands? It was like it really didn't make much of what they didn't even make sense to me. And yet, if you buy into the religion and you decide you're going to follow that path, to a degree, like a lot of the people in the congregation just blindly followed. Even to stuff that didn't make sense, they would just blindly follow. And I just never could quite get that. I feel like that's where we give our power away.
Yeah. Religions are expressed, by the way, Dan Weeks was saying, and I can't include the entire statement, but he made the comment, religion is not a small microscopic group of people, vast majority, etc., etc. Yeah, I didn't imply, or I didn't mean to imply, that religion is microscopic, but religious concepts start off with one person, and that's what I meant by the microscopic essence of religion. That is, it starts with a few people believing the same thing. It grows more and more and more, and more people buy into it and go along. And as they do, they go along with the concept. They start doing what Shira just described. They start putting some rules and regulations and some framework to the study of the concept of their religion, and start telling people, this is our religion. This is what you do if you agree with us. And it became such a cultural, society-wise thing that it wasn't just religion. It was a way of life. It was, this framework for functionality, which I believe that religion can be, but so often it is indicative of the things that are not there, that are not exemplifying humanity. A really good example is the Christian Crusades. I mean, can you imagine how many people died in the Crusades due to the concept of Jesus Christ's teachings on earth? I mean, the whole thing doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's like, if Jesus brought love to the earth and exemplified love, why did all these people get killed? Why did we have to kill and stamp out people who didn't believe the same?
Let's add in the Inquisitions as well.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of things happen in the course of religious, in the name of God, and in the name of Jesus, or in the name of somebody, and supposedly backed by the concept of loving your fellow man and doing well, doing good for others. And it indeed was not, and that's basically the human element trying to exercise what they think is right in accordance with these religious precepts and teachings, and that does not make it right. So I have a problem with a lot of religions, and I take away from them what I want and make it my own religion. And really, that's all you have. I don't care what church you go to. You've only got your religion, because you're not going to agree with everybody there. So back to the subject of for the perspective of those who do believe in God, and I respect the fact that some people do not or have their doubts, and that's okay. But in the concept, for the framework of the people who believe in some type of a God, would that God, would he, or would she, or would it create an imperfect world? And indeed, if God is who he, she, it is supposed to be, and they start from creation in perfection, if they are the expression of perfection on earth, is it even possible for them to create something that is imperfect? And I would really like that question answered.
Thought you were going to answer it, Roland.
Well, I'm going to if nobody speaks up.
Okay, I can tell you what I think about that.
Sure.
Is that God or the divine has no needs, no qualifications, no concepts around it. The source energy is the creative process. We come here as a piece of that. We manifest into the physical to experience our godliness through the physical body. So it's almost, to me, it's almost like, creating an avatar on a video game. I get to decide who I'm going to be when I come back here, what I'm going to do when I get here, what I'm going to experience in this space. And that's my God essence coming to the plate to literally to have at this game, to have at this space. And ultimately, I get to choose and decide, each one of us, and there is the co-creation thing also, mass mind information, because we're raised in cultures and traditions and religious beliefs and governmental rules and familial objects. I mean, all these things play a role in how we perceive our world, and our perception of it is part of what creates it, because we're all energy. All of this energy is interplaying all the time. It cannot be. And if we put that under a microscope, we know that fully and clearly. Every single thing can really be divided down to space and energetic vortexes, including our bodies, including everything that we're looking at. So all of it is constantly interacting. And so we don't, in our little minds, we don't really understand what that means on the big plane. But when a frequency comes at us and we perceive or experience it, even without our sensory perception notifications of it, we respond to it. And oftentimes we will respond to something, or we will bring an energy to something and create a response in our environment back to us that will cause our next response. Each one of those things create the world that we live in. And if people are not familiar with Dr. Bruce Lipton, He has some powerful, powerful information, a lot of free stuff on YouTube. He's a cell biologist who has taken a tremendous spiritual journey from the mid-'80s. He was actually working in the '60s, but from the mid-'80s on, he started moving into the spiritual realms and out of the hard biology stuff. He has some amazing teachings about epigenetics and about how the way that we perceive our environment literally creates the cellular tissue within us. So we can make ourselves sick, make ourselves healthy, simply through our perceptions. And where do our perceptions come from? They come from our parents, our teachers, our cultural upbringings. Usually our perceptions are set in motion before we are 5. They're in the subconscious and they're running us. And so those are the pieces that we have to become aware of in order to change them, or else we'll just keep getting the same thing over and over again, which is what most people have in their life, day in, day out, because they're running on those patterns, those perceptions that are creating their exterior environments.
So you said something that we are going to have as a definite subject matter in 2 weeks, because it led me to this concept that I believe for many, many decades now, and that is you can heal yourself. And to me, that applies to everybody listening to this, whether you're, doesn't matter what culture you come from, doesn't matter what society you come from, what nationality you are, whatever. I believe that you can heal yourself. And the whole concept of I can't even think of the word. The what do you call it when you apply something that is not actually the cure of something, but people think it is, and so
Palliative.
Placebo.
Placebo. The placebo effect of healing is that if you believe something, it can actually cure you. And that parallels the concept of what Jesus said, your faith has healed you. They all wanted him to kiss their robes and everybody wanted to kiss his feet, touch Jesus Christ. But basically he always turned to the people and said, no, that didn't come from me. Your faith has healed you. In other words, what you thought and what you felt inside you, what you believed, you manifested. And so when the lady comes up to him and says, my son, blah, 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 and she goes, go away, lady, your son is healed. Your faith in the healing process healed your son. And it was like that demonstrated not only did her thinking influence what was happening in her experience, it healed her son. So now she was vibrating in such a healing vibration, this wholeness, and believed that it was a possibility. Not it was a possibility, it was real. I know that Jesus can bring this to me. I believe it in my heart. She believed that so profoundly that the vibration carried on to her son, and he vibrated into the same vibration, and indeed the guy was healed. Now, in all aspects, whether we choose various facilitations like what Shira does with the sound vibration healing, and the light healers, and the people who sit and pray incessantly, all those things are the same. They raise our spiritual vibration to a different level, which brings about, by nature, physical healing. I don't think that in our expression we have any choice but to follow that path of our thinking. George, you had a couple of points?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I do. I think it was Earl Nightingale who dates back certainly to the last century. That sounds horrible, doesn't it? Anyway, he said that what the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve kind of encapsulates that whole process. And I know from discussions with Shira, because we've discussed this a lot, there are several scientific 3 or 4 studies, different blind studies, where they've done operations on people, or at least the people who were operated on, and they were given an incision, nothing more was done, and they have had the same healing process or better. This was actually knee surgery.
Yeah, I believe that this is possible. Furthermore, I believe that the human uh, concept of the being human will evolve to a point where we realize, all we have to do is think of the hand that we lost, or the arm that we've lost, or the leg that we've lost, and we will, in minutes, seconds, or instantaneously, manufacture physically a new arm, leg, or hand, whatever. And because of the body as a human has a spiritual, basically a blueprint, a biological spiritual blueprint. The body knows what it's supposed to do. The mind knows, and the conscious knows what the body's supposed to do. And then if we vibrate improperly, we start to fall apart, But if we vibrate back to where we were, anything is possible. And regarding the belief system, I believe that we will reach a point in our consciousness evolution that we will all know, oh yeah, it's easy to grow back a hand, here's how you do it. It's easy to grow back your leg. It's easy to walk again, here's how you do it. It's easy to cure cancer, here's how you do it.
Ultimately, Roland, too, the body is driven to be healthy. If we didn't even go into the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects, first off, with the placebo effect, studies prove that a third of all healings with all medications are placebo effect. Now, I think it's a crime that we're not using that information in our medical institutions.
That's saving us a lot of money as clients of those institutions.
It's just a crime. I mean, they're going to sell a pill for the same price anyways. Why are we not letting people heal themselves? It's craziness to me. Why are we not honing that skill and teaching people that power? Because we all have it, And I just think, there's so many aspects to this, but the very simple biological, physical aspects of the physical body, and I learned this in nursing, and it was somewhat mind-blowing to me, is how many hits the body will take, and it will regulate itself. It will bring itself back. It will heal a process that you have poisoned, that you have, put toxicities into, that you have injured, and the body will do it, and the body will do that until it can't anymore, until you have poisoned it to such a degree or hurt it to such a degree that the immune system starts to become impaired and that it has trouble kicking back. But if we just went straight to the physical aspect, I mean, the quest for the cures that is on right now, and there's been like 2 different episodes to that program, they are proving over and over and over again that people can heal cancer with food alone, dietary changes. Give your body what it needs. It will heal itself. It's not the food that's healing the body. It's the giving the body its power back, because the body knows what to do. So that's the simple aspect of the biological piece of healing. What you're talking about is even far greater than that, because a lot of the disease processes that you're talking about come on over many years of time. The body is accumulating and accumulating and accumulating the stress, the poison of the stress and anxiety because of your perspective or your perception of how you perceive your world. You are creating stress within your body that becomes the poison that makes you sick. And that's the emotional and energetic aspect of it, is that if we don't catch those pieces and quit friggin' selling ourselves out, if we don't come into integrity with those things, our body can't do anything with it. It's going to get sick.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And, all the holistic medicines, the concepts that are coming out right now. A very good friend of mine, Joel, is a holistic dentist. And so he comes from a very strict doctoral, medical, scientific field of dentistry. And he's a holistic dentist. And, I've talked to him extensively about this. It's like, well, what makes him different? Well, first of all, he deals with the people and what's going on in their lives and what's causing their stress. And he's found that a lot of times the stress and the sickness in their bodies, not just their mouth and with their teeth, are caused by things that are linked to what's happening in their mouth. And with those things going on, it's literally affecting more aspects of the body. But basically, he's using dentistry as a signal to identify what is happening in the person's experience that's causing not just dental problems, but whole physical problems from top to bottom. And it so often comes down to the people's thinking and what's going on in their lives emotionally, and those things are connected. So the holistics is like, let's make these people feel better one way or the other, correct a few things, eliminate the poisons in their mouth and put some better fillings in their mouth and stuff like that. And literally their entire body transforms, not just their teeth. So there's a lot of things that we do, that the functionality stuff, the therapies, that are important and that make sense. But what happens to people are people, right? They say, oh yeah, you've got to do this one thing, this therapy works. The other ones don't work, but this one works. And all of a sudden people are thinking, oh, you're telling me that this is the only way to solve my problem. And they're going, yeah, this is the one thing. It's guaranteed this will solve your problem. And I can tell you right now that if you have one of these so-called guaranteed cures, and if a person is not vibrating in the concept of healing, if they're not vibrating with improvement, if they're not vibrating in love and healing and fixing their body, that damn thing is not going to work. Yeah, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a miracle therapy or miracle pill or whatever it is. Or, radiation therapy kills as much as it fixes. It's not going to work unless the person is ready to heal. And if that person can vibrate in the concept of healing, they might come up with a number of ways to enhance the healing and to invite it over. And in other words, they're going to choose their placebo, and they're going to decide to heal. Inevitably, that's what it's doing. It's not just about something coming in foreign from the body and making the body better. It's the body and the consciousness heals, and then everything else falls in place, with or without the placebo, without the therapy or the pill.
You hit on a good point too, Roland, because one of the things that people need to understand is that you really have to believe that the body is capable of healing itself. That was one of the things that caused me to hang in there when they said my leg wouldn't heal. I grew up in a very poor family, 9 kids. We didn't go to the doctor. I can remember over a period of growing up with 8 other siblings, 2 times of any of my siblings ever being in the hospital. And it was emergency. I mean, one brother got shot in the eye with a BB gun. Okay, one brother went in, literally started to convulse as a tiny little infant, and they thought he was dying. That's the only time I remember anybody even going to the hospital. When we got sick, mother put you in a sick room, and you stayed there till you got well. And anybody who got sick behind you got in the same room with you until till you felt like having broth, and then they'd start weaning you out of there. But we didn't. We knew the body would heal itself. And that's that, although it seemed like a crutch growing up because we couldn't afford to go to the doctor for regular checkups, it became literally the guiding light for me as a therapist and for healing myself later on, because I truly believe the body can heal anything. Of course it can. I watched it happen over and over again as a child. And so people need to have that belief, and if they don't know what their body's capable of, that's where they need to search first. They need to search into those aspects like Dr. Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza, the people who are bringing the information of what the body's capable of, what some doctors will call miracles. What doctors call miracles are simply what the body's capable of doing that we have not been told we are capable of yet, and people don't know they can do it. Miracles are just the guiding lights for what we're capable of.
One of the things that I love all that stuff that you brought to this, and I'm going to be watching the replay of this, my own show here, to review the things that we talked about. But one thing that reverberates, and I won't quote where I got it from because that's a controversial subject by itself. But the concept is, and I think that you will probably mostly agree, and then, as I said, controversial, is that sickness cannot live in a healthy emotional body. So that links together a few things. First of all, I believe it totally. And the person that said it was a gentleman named Bob Proctor. So you'll remember him from the controversial movie The Secret. Now, do I follow Bob Proctor? Not much. I don't really like the guy even, but he does say a few things that make sense. And one of them was, sickness cannot live in a healthy emotional body. And if you're emotionally happy, that can change your entire physiognomy or your physical self. And all of this stems from the thoughts you have causing you to be happy, or from which you derive happiness. And if sometimes being happy is enough, if you just will be happy, that can change your entire life. Now, if you're not physically well, you're happy but you're not physically well, that's another story. Obviously there's more involved. But being happy is the polarity of positivity that can basically be linked to any cure. So that's debatable too. People say, well, people die all the time, and even if they're happy. Well, yes, there are varying degrees, and there's going to be an example that shows the opposite of what I'm saying, and no matter what I say. But the bottom line is, I think the being happy is part of the positive polarity. I wanted to make another point that I want people to notice and be aware that love, peace, and happiness can be expressed no matter what you are or who you are or what your condition is, if you want to express those things. Now, in other words, I've purported to be mostly a happy person most of the time. I'm probably one of the most positive people you know. I don't care who you are. I'm probably one of the most positive people you know. And yet, I'm in a wheelchair. I've had 3 strokes. Half my body's paralyzed, and so I'm testimonializing here that I don't have to be a perfect racquetball playing, hard running, intensely physical person to be happy or to express peace and calmness and those things and express love. To be happy, those are not prerequisites for what I wish to express or what I decide to express. I agree, George, no victimhood. I don't believe in, I believe it's a word. I believe that other people believe in victimhood, but I don't. I don't believe that it's a word applicable to myself. Now, that in itself does a few things for my attitude. If I believe that there is no such thing as victimhood, then I can't be a victim myself. So, what or who caused me to be in a wheelchair? Well, that's a good question, but ultimately I have to take responsibility for it myself. If I can't blame somebody else, in other words, be a victim, then I have to accept the responsibility myself. And that's what every psychologist is trying to get every person on earth to do anyway. Accept responsibility for yourself. And they look at it superficially, but it really goes down to the nitty-gritty core of who you are as a consciousness. Shira, your turn. Oh, you have to turn your mic on.
I thought I unmuted. Thank you. I clicked it, but I'm reference to the happiness thing that you're addressing. People need to understand that the happiness needs to be in integrity. This is one of the things that I found when I started voice printing that was really very revealing to me. Like an epidemic in the United States, that we can see emotion in the chart, and a lot of people don't show it. It's not in their chart. And basically what is happening is they're so out of integrity with how they really feel that their print does not carry it. And so the way that they're using their emotions is like a tool. They're wielding them to get what they want, to make movement in their life, to get attention, whatever it is, And so this happiness thing that you're talking about, there is an element of fake it till you make it. I'm not there yet, but I'm open. I'm open to feeling better. I'm open to, trying to get yourself there. But to just pretend happiness is not going to get you there. And I'm like you. I'm a very upbeat, happy person, you know. But I looked back when I started to spiritually heal in my life. I looked back and realized that there was a big segment of my life where I would put on a happy face and come to the plate when I wasn't feeling happy inside. And I wasn't even in integrity with myself at that time. I couldn't have told you that down deep, this isn't working for me, because I was trying to make the best of whatever I had, because that's what I learned, you know. And so we need to really do some self-evaluation to slow down and go inside, because the happiness, when you get it, it's in you. And there's nothing in your world that can go wrong that can take that away from you. You know, it's like you can have a moment of getting upset or getting, you know, pulled off base or feeling sad about something. But if and I've had this happen with George, you know, where something's coming out from me and he'll say, "Are you unhappy?" And I'll say, "No, I'm not unhappy. I just wish this piece weren't happening." You know, but I'm not happy. You know, it's like I can, in a moment, you ask me, I can go inside and I know, no, I'm still happy. This kind of sucks, but I'm still happy. You know, and so it's like, you know, it's like that's true happiness. It comes from within you, and the world will bring whatever it has to bring to you, and you'll readjust. You'll find a way to either overcome that thing, find another perspective of it, have a new belief around it, but you won't lose your happiness. I can't take it away from you.
George, you had something to add.
Yeah, just a little point there where Shira was saying about people faking their emotions and basically not being honest with themselves. Had a case in point a few weeks back. A good friend went over to see them, and you know the usual pleasantries were exchanged. And how are you doing? Fine, how are you? And it was one word, fine, how are you? It was said without even a thought. And when I brought the question up, how are you really feeling? I'm frazzled. Now, why the hell couldn't she say that in the beginning? Just as an example.
Well, that's not the nice thing to do, obviously. You know, that's part of culture and society.
We're trained.
Telling us what we are supposed to do or what the nice thing to do and so forth for the purpose of looks. I think genuineness, being genuinely happy, is also inclusive of the concept of when you're mad, you have to show that you're genuinely mad, or upset about something. You have to show that you're genuinely upset. That's a part of being authentic as a human being. It's not putting on the happy face and showing people, this is me being authentic and genuine online. See, this is the real me. It's like, I don't care what you're acting through. That's not being genuine or authentic. And I deal with this all the time in the concept of internet marketing with people like putting on the happy face in order to sell a product. It's like, Jesus Christ, I don't want to work with this person. And so go build your own website, you know. And there are a lot of things going wrong with that. We were talking about a few minutes ago, Shira, you were talking about that feeling concept of when you become happy, it shows, it's there, it's in you. Reminds me of this movie. I wish I could think of the name of it, and maybe somebody will recognize what I'm describing and be able to identify the movie, because I would love to watch it again. It's a Robert De Niro movie, and the whole movie, the guy's a grump. I mean, he's miserable throughout the entire movie, right? And at the end of the movie, the camera drops on Robert De Niro, just like a cameo, you know, shoulders up, face shot of his miserable face. And he's miserable. You can see it. And the camera stays on him for a couple of minutes. And then all of a sudden, it goes, is that what it's called? Oh, but anyway, the camera's on him. He's got this miserable face. And, of course, the movie has had all these different experiences the whole time. And so you can see it. He's just like regurgitating all these experiences and what the movie was about, and just damn this and damn that, and just all the complaints and the problems. And very slowly, as the camera's on him, his face transforms to a little bit of a smile. And then the movie the movie ends with a smile. And you think, what the hell? You know, but the idea is, even though this guy was polarized negative, was just miserable and just negative about everything and finding fault and identifying the problems and really tuning himself to these negative things and these feelings. And at the end of the movie, he realized, wow, that made me happy. And he was smiling, but it was a genuine smile. It was an authentic smile. It was how his spirit transformed from where he was to what he became at the end of the movie. And this is what people can discover about themselves. Or they can stay in that negative state forever and live out the rest of their lives in that negativity. Anyone have anything to say? We're almost out of time, obviously.
So I'd like to leave everybody with a question. It's that ask themselves, what does it take to make you happy? Because if you really, really sit with that, some deep, deep information can come up. You know, and a lot of people, when I ask that to clients, we'll go surface first, you know. We'll get the stuff or the people or the relationships, and then I'll ask it again, and I'll ask it again. And then they get deeper and deeper, and then they start to realize the real question, really, what does make me happy?
Well, that
We all
is an interesting.
have answers to that, yeah.
Yeah. And I would have to relate to it myself by saying that there's nothing outside of me that can make me happy. There's nothing outside of me. Only I can make myself happy from the inside, because the happiness is an expression of how I'm relating to the outside and what's going on. And we can look at the bright side or we can look at the negative side, and obviously from the name of this show, I choose to ask my question of what is the positive? And that is a question, if you always ask that, you're polarizing yourself to a travel, a part of your journey that will be towards the positive, a solution, the answer to the question. So I'll wrap it up in a second, but George had something to add.
It's a quick one, Roland. It's a statement I learned a while ago, and it's very simple. Happiness is a now experience, not in the future, not in the past. It's a now experience, which is where we experience all of life, right?
Right. And so, you know, whatever you're dealing with in your life, whatever your challenges are, if you're polarized positive, you're going to take from that point wherever you are and say, you'll do the traditional count my blessings concept. What can I say about my life that I'm happy for? And you're going to count those things, and you go through, and as you go over, yeah, my relationship's great. Oh, I've got a child now. Gee, I like my job right now. I just got a bonus. You're going to think of these positive things and go, bing, I'm polarizing positive and I feel good. But what people don't realize is when they're feeling good because of those thoughts, they're generating that energy out to the universe, and as like attracts like, more of the same comes to you in some form or another. So why would you ever worry? Why would you ever dwell in your anger? Why would you ever hate somebody? How does that help you? How does that serve you? It does not. So um, I'm not sure what these little symbols mean, Carlo, but did you have anything to add? We're almost out of time.
No, I was absorbing what you were saying, but I wanted to go to the point from the beginning of the event, and that is you were going to talk about free will. And I wanted to put forth the concept that there really is not any free will. There's limited free will, and everything else is cause and effect.
Well, I don't.
In my humble opinion.
Yeah, and then we probably take a little different journey path from that point, because I think free will, to me, it explains it all. Let me catch some air. Sorry. We started this whole conversation today based on the subject matter in our event details. Why would God create an imperfect world? And indeed, could a creator even make an imperfect world? And my concept of all this is that no, God could not create an imperfect world. Now, obviously highly debatable from some people's point of view. If you're a victim, you will never ever agree with me. You will never ever see my point of view that God could not create an imperfect world, and that everything within that creation, the good, bad, and the ugly, everything is all part of God's creation and part of His. Well, some people would say will, but then it becomes definable. It's like, why would He will this upon us? That's not the point. And I'll go ahead and wrap this up in a second, but go ahead, Carlo, did you have something to contribute?
Yeah, if you take into consideration historically of how we evolved, it's not a question of imperfect, it's just a question of the genetic unfoldment of a species.
Well, that's not how I look at life. I look at life, I mean, what the genetic unfoldment of the species is an observation of what's happened. It's not a projection of what we can do as spirits. And if anyone watching this show can recognize by now, I'm all about expression. I'm all about absorbing what we think, what we know, what we believe, and stepping forward from here. What is it that we do because of what we think? And what is it we change that we do because of what we change in our thinking? What is the research we do to expand our knowledge? And as we expand, how does it change our feelings, our belief, and what we do as a result of it? What is the vibrational change of what we do according to the education that we bring ourselves? And what do we express? The whole thing is we're here to express, and that is, I believe that that's God's divine plan. I believe we're here to expand and express. And that's all about selfishness. People would say selfishness. Yeah, that's when you're human, considering that other people are expressing themselves so poorly that they look like they're living in a deficit from where you are or where a lot of people are, and therefore you should be merciful and you should be happy helping them. And yeah, I believe that you should be helping them. But the ultimate expression of what you have to offer the other people is to be the best expression of who you are and set that example for others to follow. So, that kind of wraps up my theory on life. But I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We can obviously keep on going. Does anybody have any last-minute words? We have absolutely no time since we're 7 minutes over time. Go ahead,
Bye.
Shira.
Just bye.
Okay, that sounds good. Listen, I hope that people enjoy the conversation. It was not that we're going to be able to solve anybody's problems, but I hope that we gave people some ideas to expand their thinking, open your mind a little bit, and find your own way to be happy. And that's why we ask, what is the positive? Good day, everybody. Thank you very much for being here.
Bye, y'all.
Cheers.